Hey everybody, thanks for joining in today for today's webinar. My name's Ben and
I'm Alyssa Rice. I'm a business development coordinator here with Grace Technologies.
I'm also part of the business development team here at Grace. So we're kind of responsible for if you request a sample or if there's anything interested you're want to learn more about any of our product lines or anything that we can help with, we're happy to assist, etc. So we usually shoot you a call or an email to help kind of answer any questions that you might have about Grace or our products as well. But today we're going to focus on industrial control panel safety and the risks associated with accessing your ICP and doing any programming or locking and tagging out any equipment, etc. Some of the things that we're going to kind of go over today are the risks involved. So what hazards can be present. So we'll touch on a little bit of arc flash risk, some of the safety standards out there within OSHA and NFPA 70E, as well as some tips on how to make this process safer and some great questions for you to ask in your own facility on what are we currently doing and how can we improve it, as well as we'll go over some products later on that can help improve the process and keep employees safer. But here at Grace, we're all about making maintenance easier, smarter, and more productive, and most of all, safer. But Alyssa, do you want to get us kicked off with kind of some risks involved with accessing your industrial control panels?
Yeah, absolutely. So industrial control panels, they are serving as the nerve centers of industrial automation. And within that, the PLCs are going to be your brains of the operation, programmed to automate specific tasks. With that, PLCs are frequently accessed for various reasons, whether that's, routine maintenance or updates in programming, which means you're going to expose technicians to potential electrical hazards with opening the ICP doors. According to OSHA, electrical accidents rank among the most common causes of workplace injuries in industrial settings because the exposure to live circuits while working on an open panel significantly increases the risk of electrical shocks, arc flash incidents, and other related injuries. And just because you have a safety policy and procedure built around equipment doesn't necessarily guarantee you an incident-free facility.
Yeah, 100%.
Non-fatal injuries because of electric shock and electrocutions increased 67% in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think a big thing that people often think of when we have our conversations with various customers in every single industry is typically, people are a lot more nervous, and rightfully so, a medium and higher voltage, yet the majority of injuries and accidents actually occur on the lower voltage side, because typically that's the most frequently accessed. Either it's 110 volt with you're trying to make a programming change, maybe 480 volts, locking and tagging out a piece of equipment where there's some potential arc flash risk there. And typically, again, that is where we actually see more frequent injuries occur or electrical hazards occur, just because people are in them every single day and people are having to do PLC programming work or needing to lock and tag out a panel or a piece of equipment very, very frequently, and much more so often than shutting down medium voltage switchgear or a transformer or anything like that. So a big way to allow for a decrease in electrical incidents occur in your facility is focusing on how can we make our low voltage systems safer and our procedures for accessing our low voltage systems safer as well.
Absolutely. And just to touch on, some of the common reasons for electrical incidents in the workplace, unqualified or underqualified people that are performing the tasks, would you say, Ben?
I mean, I think that's one of the most common ones I hear,
Absolutely.
Or one of the most common concerns that we probably both hear as well.
Definitely.
And I don't think that's just on a domestic level. I just got back from Europe a few weeks ago, and that was a big pain point that I heard overseas on an international scale, as well as, unqualified or underskilled workers or new employees as well that are having to access a PLC or make some programming changes, as well as, you don't have the, I guess, quote unquote, years and years of experience or the seasoned experience as some of the older folks in the industry who are able to know a lot more about the equipment, who have experience working with every single control panel or piece of equipment out there.
Definitely. And I mean, there's also production pressure from unplanned downtime as well. That's also a factor. And workplace culture and complacency too.
Yeah.
I mean, how often are you having conversations with people, saying, it's common to see maintenance technicians, not putting on the right amount of PPE or, it's easy to get stuck in that routine of, oh, it hasn't happened to me. I've been doing this for so long. I'm, going to cut some corners. That's something that definitely comes up in conversations.
Yeah, 100%.
When I'm talking to people, yeah.
And I've heard the same exact things. And, unfortunately I've heard is, people have safety protocols in place or safety procedure in place. And we can ask the question of, hey, are people following this? And unfortunately, the answer quite frequently is no. And that is because very frequently the procedure or system that you have in place is not easier than what the employees or maintenance guys are already used to doing. So the question becomes, how can we make our procedures easier and more efficient so it becomes the faster choice to choose to do a safety protocol as well? But I mean, Alyssa, so with your conversations, you mentioned complacency. Where do you think that comes from, or how do you think that comes about in the workplace?
I mean, whether it's just routine and, again, like you have these seasoned people, they've been doing things for a long time. And I guess I can also kind of touch on, with a new workforce coming in too, the people, that are leading by example, how are they teaching these new people coming into the workplace? Are we prioritizing like PPE requirements and reading the labels properly and following procedure? Are we teaching that? Because sometimes if you get into a routine with stuff, you'll kind of forget to explain that stuff when you're even training a new employee. So I feel like it just, comes with time, and also just like workplace culture too. If you cultivate a culture of safety and you aren't cutting the corners and you're doing what you need to do and you're implementing that as a culture for your workplace, that it's going to be a lot easier to, follow everything to a T.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very common, like you're mentioning too, with employees who've been in the field for a while. They've done it, a certain way for however many years, and it can become very easy just to assume, oh, this hasn't happened to me, for however many years. It's not going to. I know it does exist, but also when you kind of do something every single day, it becomes very easy to just kind of diminish the risks involved with working around electricity. And I think it's very important to make sure or reiterate very frequently that there are a lot of risks while accessing your PLC or making programming changes or accessing your industrial control panel, whether it's locking and tagging out the piece of equipment, again, accessing your PLC, doing something with your VFD, et cetera. There are risks involved. And I think the more frequently you do that, it's easier to forget about those risks or diminish those risks, even though the risks are very much so present.
Yeah. Ben, so what conversations have you had around, production pressure from unplanned downtime?
Yeah, I think production pressure is a really tough one because all the employees know how valuable it is to move product out the door. And for example, for the automobile industry, I think it's the stats are every minute of downtime, it's at least $10,000. So for example, when we were talking yesterday about locking and tagging out equipment, it's very frequently takes 45 minutes, maybe even more to lock and tag out a piece of equipment. And if that's the case with that unplanned downtime, then you're looking at quite a bit of money there just for needing to lock and tag out that piece of equipment, and if it takes even longer, obviously the revenue or revenue loss just keeps adding up. And people know that. And so it's more likely for them to cut corners because they're trying to limit that revenue loss as much as possible. Because I think a lot of people do truly care because it's their own job. It's kind of their own little thing that they want to make sure they're doing a good job, and they kind of almost be the hero in a way. Of being able to cut the time and save some revenue loss there. So making somehow your procedures easier so when unplanned downtime does occur, because unfortunately it's just going to at some point. Yeah. So when that does happen, how can we be more prepared to allow our employees to choose the safer option that's still going to be quicker than maybe the unsafe option?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben. So what are the importances of compliance with safety standards? You want to touch on that, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So obviously I'm sure most of us are well aware of standards from OSHA, NFPA 70E. You have the Canadian version, which is CSA Z465 or 462. Z462. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. And you have CE as well. So there's all sorts of standards. And we had a webinar here a few months back with Terry Becker, who did a wonderful job of going through all of the various updates within NFPA 70E as well as CSA Z462 for the 2024 year as well. And we can throw a link in there in the chat or something, or after, if you have questions about that webinar, to get all up to date with the new changes. But basically, all of these things, they are trying to help people become safer with their procedures and make sure people go home the same way they arrived, which is a big goal here at Grace, is allowing companies and plants to make sure you are providing your employees with all the safest options to make sure and ensure that they go home the same way they came to work. And you want them to be safer. So there are a whole bunch of regulations within NFPA 70E or OSHA, et cetera. And we do have some resources via past webinars, as well as we do have an expert network who Terry Becker is a part of, where they can look at all of your safety procedures already in place and help you redesign those if that is what's called for. They can help be a resource for you for arc flash studies, et cetera. It's a great and fantastic place to start to figure out how can we be the safer choice or allow our employees to make the safer choice at your plant.
Definitely. So Nick, if you want to pull up the risk or the hierarchy of risk controls, just as a visual for you guys, as we look at the risk control hierarchy, I'm going to challenge you guys to reflect on where you are at on this pyramid. Many first lines of defense are both PPE and administrative controls, which change the way people work. But what they both have in common is that there's room for human error, and there's no guarantee that workers are going to follow those to a T. So, I urge you to check out the GracePort ebook online. You guys can download it from our website. And we have, like a 3-step way that you can evaluate your own safety strategies for your ICP. And step 1 would be just a discovery, identifying your equipment, your personnel involved in operation and maintenance on the equipment, the frequency of the tasks that are performed, and identifying your hazards. From there, you can plan and list the activities that are involved during normal operation, list all the components and devices that need to be accessed in an energized condition. List the workers that are involved and their qualifications, and also, list hazards associated with each task. And from there, you can kind of execute that plan and implement, bringing the accessible components to the door, use a rated housing or enclosure that meets the type of rating for the enclosure, and update your procedures and train your employees on how to safely perform those tasks. And a lot of the products that we, make here are going to be in these top little 3. I'm like, I can't even do it. But the elimination substitution, just completely eliminating that risk altogether, or at least substituting it. So, you're not having just full exposure.
Yeah, and
to
the big
hazards.
reason why we try to focus on those kind of top tiers, as you see, is typically people's first option is what they choose is the PPE gear. And yes, that can be a very good option, but the problem with PPE it's one of the actually least effective ways to protect your employees against arc flash. And the reason being, if it's the appropriate rated arc flash gear, yes, you're going to protect them against burns or electrocutions or anything like that. But the problem becomes when an arc flash incident occurs, it's literally like an explosion. So you're going to have a shock wave, and that shock wave can blow an employee back into a wall. It could blow them through a wall. I think a lot of us have probably seen the very scary and unfortunate videos on either YouTube or et cetera of these incidents occurring. And it's very scary, and it's a very real incident that does occur, throughout the globe with arc flash. And so it's how can we prevent our employees from never having to experience this incident or experience an arc flash incident. And a big thing with Grace is we want to focus on the top tiers here, because it eliminates your employee from having to work with the hazard itself. So as we know, is if you can work and do your maintenance work with the panel door closed, you have a barrier in between you, and it severely limits the arc flash potential from occurring. And as I'm sure we all know, typically plants are not the most cleanly of places.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of dust buildup. So the more frequently you open up that panel door, the more dust is allowed to get inside that panel, which obviously dust and electricity and electrical components aren't the greatest of friends.
Yeah. They don't mix. Come on, people.
They don't mix. So trying to avoid that as much as possible of, hey, how can we protect our employees? One, limit the amount of times you have to open up that panel while it's live to prevent dust buildup in those electrical components, as well as it actually saves you a lot of money, not only for your employees, because it's going to quicken the procedure time, but also number two is the dust buildup can damage your components inside of your panel.
Yeah.
And as we all know, that stuff isn't very cheap, and it adds up very frequently or very quickly over time if that stuff does get damaged. And then you're gonna have to shut down that panel and replace some components potentially. So the more frequently or the more availability we have to keep that panel door closed, the better off that your plant will be, and the more enhanced productivity your plant will see as well.
Absolutely. And even just in my conversations that I have with people, I tell them, I'm like, work smarter, not harder. That's really what I believe our products bring to the table. It kind of just, it brings out that harder, that hard work piece, and you're just able to, safe, smart, and more productive. Literally our tagline for Grace.
100%.
You're able to work safer, smarter, and more productive with our products. So
yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point earlier with one of the most common reasons we see electrical incidents in the workplace is new employees or underqualified employees. And obviously, I think we can all say that it feels like there is a workforce shortage, or there's a issue with people finding good quality workers throughout the workplace, and it's more of a global scale as well. So I've heard a lot of some maintenance managers, et cetera, they're worried about some of the new employees coming in. They want to make sure they're choosing the safer option and nothing's going to occur. So how can we do that? And like you mentioned earlier, is asking yourself, what all are the components involved in a certain procedure? What is the risks associated with each panel or piece of equipment? And then what are my options on how to make this safer? And making sure an employee or a newer employee, especially who doesn't maybe fully understand or know all of the components within inside the panel and what can be exactly dangerous, what I can and can't touch, you don't have to worry about that as much as if you can keep that panel door closed, and you can almost basically dummy proof the system or the procedure by, hey, this is exactly where you plug in your PLC, your cable to access your PLC on the outside of the panel. You can plug in your laptop to a GFCI outlet. Actually, Nick was sharing with us yesterday too, it's NFPA 79, correct? Is that you actually, if you do have a GFCI outlet within the panel, you do have to test that, I believe, once a month according to those standards. And if you have that right outside the panel, it makes that a lot easier. You don't have to open that up. It can be tested right outside of the panel, et cetera. So it does comply with those standards and makes some of those procedures a little bit easier and faster for you. Plus, you don't have to worry about those new employees kind of fiddling around inside that panel and maybe touching something that they shouldn't, and then an accident is occurring.
Definitely.
But Alyssa, would you want to give a quick intro to kind of GracePort and what our panel interface connectors are?
Sure. So I actually do have a new innovation here with me. So just to kind of highlight some new innovations that we have here at Grace, we did for the GracePort add a new USB-C component, and this is our new MagView housing. So our MagView housing is going to be a magnetic seal and lid, which ensures secure closure and magnetically attaches to the enclosure, allowing you to be hands-free. So let me just try to open this up. It's really strong. So I thought I was going to have to hit the gym in order to open this. But here's the magnetic housing in all of its glory. It's a great option. Our traditional GracePorts have the latch on there. So again, this is just taking it, adding a magnetic seal. So it's going to magnetically shut. And it is able to be padlocked. So I know there's a lot of concerns for people, with security and access. So this can be locked to keep people out that you don't want in there. And yeah, I mean, IP66, IP69, IP69K rated. UL type 1, 2, 3, 3X, 3R, like all of the different ratings on this one. So this is a great option for GracePort if you're looking to get a GracePort. And we could always chat with you about a sample if that was of interest for you guys. But yeah, so this is our new innovation. Really awesome. People are already loving it.
Yeah, and I think the basis of this GracePort, especially what you're seeing here with the MagView housing, is we started the GracePort line back in the early 90s by Phil Allen, who's the founder of the company. Again, it's still a family-run company, as Drew is our current CEO. Is the whole concept here is how can we keep the panel door closed and still do our programming changes and access our PLC? So that's kind of how the GracePort was born. Phil came up with this design and product line again back in the early 90s, and it kind of skyrocketed ever since, just because it allows people to be safer, work a bit more efficient and smarter at work, because it takes away the hazard as well as it allows you to still do the same work and procedures, but again, takes away the hazard and makes it quite a bit faster too. So since the early days of the GracePort, we've actually done over 20,000 unique product combinations of these components. So whether you need a GFCI, multiple USB plugins, multiple RJ45 Ethernet cables, etc., whatever it might be, we've probably already done it. And if we haven't, I'm sure we probably can. Again, like Alyssa said, just get with us and we'll help figure out what your application is, what the components that you need, what environmental ratings that you need as well. We do have various options there. Like our GracePort Plus, which is an HMI cover, and then you can do all of the different components inside. We have a stainless steel housing. We have, obviously, like Alyssa said, the MagView housing as well. And the big thing is it helps make the process even easier. It's more flush mount, so it's a little bit, it's not sticking as far out of the panel.
Low profile, for sure.
Very low profile, as well as with the magnets, some worries are with maintenance employees of, hey, we got to make sure this gets fully closed. You hit the latch, etc. So now with the magnets, it just closes all the way down. I still do recommend to make sure you take your tool and screw in the 2 screws at the bottom.
Right here.
But a nice other little plus of the magnets is that if you do have a metal enclosure, you can flip the cover open and the magnets are going to hold the cover up to the panel as well. So you don't have to potentially maybe hold the cover open or against the panel door the whole time. But Alyssa, when someone does, or what have we seen when someone does include a GracePort into their facility, into their industrial control panels, typically what is the productivity enhancement or increase do we see?
Yeah, we see increased productivity by 90%, and that's a lot. 90%
crazy.
is a lot. So, people, that's really helping streamline the process. The lengthy time to, lock and tag out a piece of equipment, or, that can be up to 45 minutes of time just to, access that panel. So, with this, so it's just bringing those connections to the door so you're able to just, safely plug and play, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. And with that 90% increase in production within your employees for accessing your industrial control panel, for making PLC changes, etc., with that productivity increase, we typically see a return on investment with their GracePorts when you implement those into your facility in just 2 to 3 programming sessions. So if you imagine over the course of a year, how many times you might have to program a PLC in an industrial control panel.
Yeah.
I mean, that adds up to be quite the return on investment, where you're getting your employees more productive at their job, et cetera. And like we mentioned earlier, a big problem a lot of people are facing is an employee shortage. How can we get more employees to be able to either maybe handle a bit more tasks? Well, the option there is, how can we make our tasks easier? And how can we make things faster for employees to do so they can do a little bit more, maybe handle a few more tasks, et cetera, because it's not taking any more time. It's actually saving them time by choosing either using a GracePort, or we have some other product lines as well to make tasks a lot more productive too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with that the staff shortages and stuff, again, like I've had so many conversations about that, and it's really killing the workforce right now. So, any way we can help, streamline that process, that's a win.
Yeah, 100%. And so within the GracePort, again, we have a whole bunch of different customized options. typically, I know a thing on people's mind is just because of the pandemic, there's a big supply chain issue, et cetera, throughout the last few years. Our build to ship times is 3 to 5 days. So as soon as we get an order coming in, we will have that built in-house in Davenport, Iowa, and shipped out the door in 3 to 5 days. So we promise you, I know, getting up and running, getting a new line in, we will not be the reason why a delay happens. Grace has always been very proud of our production and how fast we can get things out the door. But so kind of go a little bit back, just kind of connect some of the GracePorts and panel interface connectors with a lot of the issues people are facing in the workforce, like we talked about, underqualified personnel or new personnel, et cetera, that you might be worried about touching various things inside the panel that you don't want them to because it's dangerous, right? Yeah. So how can this help for production pressure or company culture?
I mean, with company culture, I guess, you're giving people an easy way to just go up and access. And again, like they're not touching around in the panel. You're not having to worry, these have all the connections that you would need. So again, they're fully customizable to whatever you need for your ICP. So whatever connections you need, again, this is fully customizable to what you need to access your connections. But again, I feel like, by implementing this is just adding something to a procedure, and I mean, it's kind of foolproof. Why would you need to access the panel? When you have one of these right on the door. So I think it changes company or like workplace culture all in all.
Yeah, 100%.
One of these.
And think about too, when you do have unplanned downtime, and there's times where you do have to access your PLC where it actually is required.
Yep.
Because you have to either lock and tag out the equipment or open up the door and work on a live circuit. This allows you to access your PLC, keep that panel door closed, where it's going to save you quite a bit of time. Like Alyssa mentioned earlier, it's going to save 90% for productivity, or increase productivity by 90% of being able to program your PLC, et cetera, make those changes that you need to do under that unplanned downtime pressure. As well as, like you mentioned with company culture, is the GracePort allows, or panel interface connectors like our GracePort here, allows you to make safety the easier choice.
Yeah.
So typically, I think we all know humans are not we're pretty lazy people.
We're not perfect. So we make mistakes. There's error.
So we want to make the procedures as easy as possible and as quick as possible. So the more you make your procedures the easier choice and the safer choice, the more people will choose to do so. So adding a GracePort in, I think it's very easy to see that your company culture can change. One, it shows your employees that you're willing to invest in safety and efficiency and make their lives and jobs easier, so they're able to handle some more tasks or able to feel safer at the workplace, et cetera. So they see with a monetary investment into safety, they see it is a priority for you guys. They see it's very important, and it feels like it makes employees feel the company cares a lot more for them, right?
Absolutely.
And again, I cannot reiterate enough of how much better your facility can be, or safer your facility can be, if you make safety the easier choice. And that's what our GracePort allows, is making safety the easier choice. The big thing here is people aren't going to follow a safety procedure, if it's a lot harder than how they were previously doing it. So like Alyssa, what you mentioned earlier about identifying your equipment that people have to frequently access, identify the components that are in there, and identify kind of the steps people typically need to take or are currently taking, and then asking, how can we get people to do this different, or how can we make this safer, is always very important.
Definitely. Just a sidebar, we're going to go ahead and throw a poll up on the screen for you guys, just asking if you want to get us to get a hold of you to answer any questions that you might have about the different GracePort configurations, power options, honestly, anything that you need from us about GracePort, as well as our expert network, if you were interested in learning a little bit more about that. And one thing I just wanted to highlight too, because I totally forgot to say it earlier, with the GracePort, as you see, here I'll show you. We have our GracePort logo right here. We can, for no additional cost to you guys, put your logo on there for free. So if that is something of interest, we have tons of different customers with their own special U code, which has their logo attached to that. So we can send it out. And again, it's branded to whatever logo you would like to throw on these panel interface connectors, which is super awesome.
Yeah, so if you're an OEM or a panel builder or machine builder, et cetera, it can give you a little extra front of mind marketing having your logo on the GracePort.
Definitely.
We do love our logo, but if that's something that you guys are looking into, we're more than happy to work with you guys.
We love you guys so much. We'll take our logo off and put yours.
But if you guys have any questions about our GracePorts or about kind of what we've chatted about today, feel free to drop those in the chat, and Nick can let us know what kind of comes in.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, and just as a reminder, we will send this webinar out on demand in case you'd like to share it with anybody. And everyone who was unable to attend today, will get that as well. And thank you for your participation. I don't really have any questions at this time, so we'll just give it a minute.
Yeah. And again, I would reiterate, so with some of the industrial control panel safety with the standards within NFPA 70E or OSHA, we do have a really great resource in Terry Becker and our expert network to be able to help answer those questions that you may have that can be pretty technical and pretty going into the weeds within those procedures or those safety standards, et cetera. And feel free, if that's something that you're interested, I believe that expert network is an option, and we can send you that webinar with Terry Becker as well as he goes over all the new NFPA 70E changes for 2024.
Definitely.
Great. And yeah, I do see someone has raised their hand. Unfortunately, we can't participate via microphones with our attendees. So if you do have a question, just drop it in that chat, and we will do our best to respond to you.
So Alyssa, what's your favorite part about GracePorts?
The logo. I want to put my face on a GracePort. I feel.
We did that with a Bernie and Les comic.
Did you?
You
Okay.
can see it back here.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like I need my own personal GracePort with Alyssa's face on it.
That'd be awesome.
You know, I thought about like a Christmas ornament idea of like with the GracePorts, and then we could print everybody's little face on a little like Christmas ornament. That'd be kind of cool.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Bernie and Les comic strip here. Basically, gives the whole concept of GracePort before using it, and then after. It's quite a bit easier and makes things a little bit nicer. We got a question coming in?
Yeah. So what is the warranty for Grace products?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So basically, typically, I would say just reach out to us and see what issues you are having. We are very customer focused, and we want to work with you guys on being able to answer any questions, and we're happy to probably be pretty flexible there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of different configurations.
Yeah.
I know that some people will want to order components directly from us. We don't actually ship out directly with components, but we work with you guys to make sure everything's working great when you get it. I think that's all we got, guys. If you want to close it down and say farewell to our attendees, thank you all so much for attending, and I will send you guys all out follow-up email. I'll include some of the materials that they referenced, the ebook, as well as that past webinar with Terry Becker where he talked about changes to NFPA 70E and CSA Z462. But take it away, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining the webinar today. We definitely very appreciate it. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in or reach out to us later.
Absolutely. Have a safe and electrical day, everyone.